problem that a lot of you asked me about. It's problem number 7 from homework 3.1. In this case, we're trying to solve the inequality given here, and it gives us a hint about our solution. It's going to be an open interval, and we want to write the endpoints of the interval. So now, how do we solve this inequality? Well, first thing to realize is that the left-hand side, it's a quadratic. It's a second-degree polynomial. All right, so how do we do that? Well, how do we solve this right here? Well, we're going to start by graphing a related equation. We're going to graph the quadratic function y equals x squared plus 6x minus 40. So we're going to graph this, and then we're going to use this to solve this inequality. So how do we do this? Well, there's a few things we're interested in. Actually, there's really only two things we're interested in. First, whether the graph opens up or down. And to do that, we're going to look at this number right here. This is a quadratic function in standard form, and so this corresponds to a. And because a is positive 1, this tells us that the graph, it opens upward. So our graph is going to end up looking like this. Now, the other thing we need is the x-intercepts. Now, we could also get the vertex, and that might help, but really we only need these two things. We need to know that the graph opens upward, and we need the x-intercepts. And when we use it to solve this, I'll explain why these are the only things we need. So, to find the x-intercepts, we have to think about what it means for the graph, what it means for the graph to cross the x-axis. It means that at that point where the graph crosses the x-axis, the y-coordinate is 0. So to find the x-coordinate, to find the x-intercept, we're going to let y be 0, and we're going to use this equation. So this equation here is telling us that for all points on the graph, the y-coordinate is the x-coordinate squared plus 6 times the x-coordinate minus 40. We're looking for points whose y-coordinate is 0, and we're going to start off by letting y be 0, like this, and trying to find the corresponding x-coordinates. In other words, we're trying to solve this equation. We're trying to find the values of x that solve this equation. Now, to solve this equation right here, we can try factoring this right-hand side. We'll start off like this. And we need to find two numbers whose product is negative 40 and whose sum is 6. In this case, that'll be plus 10 and minus 6. And so if you FOIL this out, oops, actually that doesn't work. Actually, plus 10 and then minus 4. Right? So if you FOIL this out, the L in FOIL will give you negative 40. The O and the I will give you 4x and 10x, actually negative 4x and 10x, which add to 6x. So this here is how you factor this. Now, once we have this, we can take advantage of this fact. If a times b is equal to 0, then either a is 0 or b is 0. And what that means in this case is because we have a product that's equal to 0, it means that either the first factor, x plus 10, is 0, or the second factor, x minus 4, is 0. Now this is equivalent to saying that x is equal to negative 10, and this is equivalent to saying that x is 4. So the x-intercepts are going to be the points with an x-coordinate of negative 10, and an x-coordinate of 4, and of course their y-coordinates are 0. So these are the x-intercepts. And alright, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to plot these points. So this point right here, negative 10, 0, it's going to be somewhere over here, and this is just a very rough graph. So somewhere over here, right here, though this point 4, 0 is going to be somewhere over here. Alright, our graph is going to pass through those points, and it's going to open upward. So very roughly, our graph is going to look something like this. Right? passes through 4, 0 and negative 10, 0. So imagine that I drew this a little bit better. Now, how can we use this to solve our inequality? Because you know, this looks very different from this, right? So again, let's just do this. The red here represents all points for which this equation is true. All right, actually, let me do this. Let me move this down here. Move this over here so I can use it. Okay, so getting back to what we want, we want to solve this inequality. X squared plus 6x minus 40 is less than 0. Okay, we want to solve this inequality. All right, how do we use this line? Well, how do we use this graph? Well, we recognize that on this graph, x squared plus 6x minus 40, that's y. That's going to be equal to y. And so solving this inequality is equivalent to solving this inequality, where here y, actually it's equivalent to finding points on the graph where y is less than 0. Okay, so again, we wanted to solve this inequality right here, and now on this graph, this inequality, or this left-hand side is y, and so solving this inequality is equivalent to finding points on this graph whose y-coordinate is less than 0, because again, this is y, but only on this graph, only on the red part of the graph. So, all right, now, on this graph, y is 0, y is less than 0 for this part, not including these endpoints right here. Okay, and all right, so we're pretty much done. All we have to do is figure out how to write our answer. So these are the parts of the, so for this part of the graph, that's where y is less than 0. On that part of the graph, y is x squared plus 6x minus 40. So actually, for these parts of the graph, you know, x squared plus 6x minus 40 is less than 0. Okay, now again, we're trying to solve this equation. We're trying to find values of x for which this equation is true, and that'll be the values of x for this part of the graph. And so the x values for this part of the graph, they'll be part of the interval -10 to 4. And that's it. This is our solution. We can plug it in, see what Weber tells us. It should tell us that we're correct. So -10, 4. Check our answer, and there we go. All right, so that's how you solve that inequality.